Welcome to today's session, Streamlining Oracle Applications from On-Premises to VMware Hybrid Cloud. My name is Sudhir Balasubramanian. I'm a Staff Solution Architect and Oracle Practice Lead for VMware. I'm joined by Faisal Hassan.
Hi, I'm Faisal Hassan. I'm a Senior Principal Product Manager for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure at Oracle.
Thank you, Faisal. So let's move on to the agenda for today's discussion. Essentially, we'll start with talking about the benefits of running Oracle workloads on a VMware platform. We'll talk about what customers really want, which essentially is the VMware Hybrid Cloud. We will then do a brief introduction into one of the VMware Hybrid Clouds, essentially Oracle Cloud VMware Solution. Faisal will then do a deep dive on Oracle Cloud VMware Solutions. We'll wrap it up with a lot of collaterals and hopefully time for question and answers. All right. So let's take a look at some of the benefits of running Oracle workloads on a VMware platform. Right. So even before we look at the advantages of virtualization, right, one must understand what Oracle business critical applications really are, right? What are the requirements, right? And then once we understand the requirements, understand the benefits of running these business critical Oracle workloads on a VMware vSphere platform. I mean, essentially, any application that is deemed business critical will need to have certain SLAs, right? They would have certain RTOs, they would have certain RPOs, essentially a set of stringent requirements. For example, availability. Well, an BCA or an application must be highly available. It must be resilient. It must have redundancy, right? Performance. The timely process completion is very critical. Essentially, one must avoid all kinds of process bottleneck. The fact that the application must be recoverable, right? You should have the RPO, the RTO, the MTD, and the WRT. All of that should be very low, and the recovery plans must be verifiable and repeatable. And you should be able to scale up. You should be able to scale up. You should be able to scale out. You should be able to add CPUs on the fly. You should be able to add memory on the fly, disk on the fly, so that the online operation doesn't get affected as and when we scale the infrastructure, right? Inside out, right? In fact, and the other aspect of this whole requirement is, the security. I mean, security is very important, right? Both from internal and external attacks, and one has to be compliant with the industry standard security practices. So these are some of the benefits. I mean, not particular to an Oracle BCA, which basically helps all workloads on a VMware platform, essentially resource maximization. And as we all know, server resources increase too much for one application instance. So by using virtualization, all right, or the process of virtualization, that improves resource utilization, and essentially that reduces wastage here. Right? The fact that you have enhanced availability, and I can give an example here, simply by running Oracle RAC on a VMware HA or on a VMware platform, you basically get two levels of high availability. You get the application level high availability that Oracle RAC provides, and tack on to that, you get the infrastructure level high availability that VMware vSphere provides. And if one were to extend this infrastructure across metro distance, we get what's called a site level HA. So simply by using an extended Oracle RAC, for example, on a VMware vSphere platform, which is stretched across metro distance, right, thereby stretching the storage and also by stretching the network, one gets 3 levels of HA, and this is what we call an extended Oracle RAC across metro distance. Right. So some of the other benefits are essentially rapid provisioning. We have scaling, and the fact that you get lower TCO, you get significant savings in power, cooling, data center space, and administration. All right. So these are some of the features of VMware vSphere, right? Essentially the high availability feature, right? Everybody on the call here understands, or probably must have heard about VMware HA, where if we have a operating system failure, or if there's any kind of hardware failure, what happens is the virtual machine gets restarted on any one of the existing servers in the vSphere cluster, right? So that the line of business is sustained, there is no breach of SLAs, and the online operation can continue, right? And the online operation can continue. The best part is that all along, right, the DRS, which is the distributed resource scheduler, right, it was basically reactive in nature, right? With the recent advancements in vSphere, essentially 6.5, 6.7, and now 7.0 and 7.0 U1, right, essentially the DRS of the distributed resource scheduler, right, which is essentially an algorithm that samples all resource utilization every minute, right, that has become more proactive. That essentially looks at every server, every component of the server, and sees, oh, you know what, if this particular component is failing or it might fail, it's proactive enough to move the virtual machines off that server onto other servers in the vSphere cluster, right, so that business can proceed as normal, right? The second aspect to the whole vSphere high availability, the proposition here is VMware Vmotion, wherein you're able to have live migration of any virtual machine, right? Databases, applications, web client as well, right? From one physical server to another physical server without any kind of service interruption, right? And the fact that you're able to now provide a host maintenance at any point of the time, but simply putting the host in a maintenance mode, right? And the virtual machines which are essentially running on that server will then live vMotion over to other servers in the cluster, right? And thereby you are able to perform your patching or update to that host during business hours, right? And I've already spoken about the VMware DRS or the Distributed Resource Scheduler. So let's take a moment and look at the maximum scalability, the performance with all of the versions of vSphere, right? If you look at these, right, essentially what we're trying to say here is processes are getting faster. I mean, you see the caches are getting bigger. NUMA awareness is better. The hypervisor gets smarter and smarter every day. The storage, of course, gets faster as well. I mean, all of these factors, it make it perfect for virtualizing most of applications. With each version of VMware vSphere, right, the performance and the scalability has been increasing by leaps and bounds. Right. The key thing to keep in mind here, or the key thing to mention here, is any lingering performance concerns. So any lingering performance concerns relating to VMware virtual machines, they are clearly due to a lagging perception from very early generations, which I agree had very limited capabilities. And then the link at the bottom of the slide essentially goes through the config maximum, and that shows you the configuration maximum for every vSphere version, right? If you want to find out what is the max amount of, or the maximum number of PV SCSI controllers or SCSI controllers a virtual machine can have, or how much memory or how much vCPUs a VM can have. Right. So again, a glance at the config maximums for the virtualized compute, right? If you look at it, we can see that we have virtual machines, and that these virtual machines can sustain workloads as high or as large as 256 vCPUs with 6 terabyte of RAM, right? We also have the ability to add NVMe controllers. We have the ability to add NVDIMM controllers, right? And if you happen to look at the number of virtual SCSI controllers and the number of the VMDKs, or virtual disk per SCSI controllers, right? The number of VMDKs per PV SCSI controller has essentially increased from 15 to 64, right? Which gives us a total of 256 VMDKs, right? Now, every VMDK can go to a max of 60 to 62 terabytes. So you guys can do the math, right? So essentially, we are able to address a lot of vCPUs. You're able to address a lot of memory. You're able to now add on, right, virtual RDM adapters. You're able to add on NVMe adapters. You can even use NVDIMM controller in the use case here is persistent memory. And the fact that you're able to scale up your compute, your memory, and your storage, right? So again, the link at the bottom is the config max. I mentioned that in the previous slide before. So moving on. All right. So with vSphere 6.5 and with vSphere 6.7, right, a lot of features were announced, right? And they're very beneficial to business critical application workloads. And I'm just going to talk about some of the notable features here. Essentially, if with vSphere 6.5, right, the vNUMA, or the cores per socket, that dependency was disconnected, right? Essentially what happened was we saw customers making a lot of mistakes when they had to assign the correct number of cores to the correct number of socket based on the actual physical NUMA. So what we decided was, let's make things easy for our customers. Let's make sure that vSphere comes up with the best design, right, irregardless of the number of socket or number of cores that a customer has assigned to the virtual machine inadvertently, right? And so we basically took away the dependency between the number of cores and the number of sockets so that we can now present the correct NUMA topology to the operating system, right? And I've already spoken about the fact that you have 4 NVMe adapters with 15 targets per NVMe adapters, right? We also spoke about the fact that a virtual machine can have 1 NVDIMM controller with a lot of persistent memory, right? And the use case here is accelerating performance of an Oracle database, for example, right? The fact that you have para-virtualized RDMS support, and the use case that comes in my mind is an Oracle Rack interconnect or the cache fusion traffic, right? If you look at 6.7, right, we have the 1 gigabyte large memory pages. I do understand that even with Oracle right now, the maximum memory page that one can go to one can go with is 2 megabyte, but with ESXi version 6.7, we came up with the 1 gigabyte flash memory pages. So essentially, there are a lot of features that we have released in 6.5, 6.7, right? And which business critical application Oracle workloads can take advantages of. Right. So moving on to vCS 7.0 U1, right? And essentially that was released on 15th of September this year, 2020, right? With vSphere 7 update 1, right? As you can see, the monster virtual machine, right? That's the use case here. A monster virtual machine can scale up to 24 terabytes of VRAM, right? And it can support to a max of 768 vCPUs, right? This essentially leaves other hypervisor vendors far behind in this category. So Monster VMs they support large-scale environment or large-scale-up environments by offering the full resources of a host to individual virtual machines, right? So essentially, we were able to achieve this scale by tuning the ESXi scheduler and the co-scheduling logic for large virtual machines. What we did was we also removed the bottleneck in the vCPU sleep or the wake-up paths, right? And we also reduced the memory overhead. So by doing all of these, right, we are now able to make sure that a monster virtual machine can scale up, right, to a maximum of 24 terabyte for the virtual machine's RAM or memory, and up to 768 vCPUs per monster VM. And again, this the link at the bottom of the slide essentially it takes you to a blog article that talks in depth about the monster virtual machine and the use case here. Right. So we spoke about the fact that vSphere 7.0 was released. I also mentioned that there was a lot of features added as part of vSphere 7.0. Some of the notable ones which I really want to call out in this session here today is the fact that DRS has been improved, the fact that Vmotion has been refactored, right? So let's take a couple of seconds and talk about VMware vSphere DRS, right? So with VMware vSphere DRS used to focus on the cluster state. It used to check if the cluster needs any kind of rebalancing, right? Because it could happen that one ESXi server is overconsumed while another ESXi server has less resources consumed, right? And then we used to use Vmotion to balance the cluster, right? This is something that everybody knows, right? With the new DRS logic on 7.0, what happens is the new DRS logic, it takes a very different approach. What it does, it computes a VM DRS core on host and then moves the virtual machine to a host that provides the highest VM DRS core. Now the biggest difference to the old DRS version being it no longer balances the host load, right? It means for current DRS version, right, it cares less about the ESXi host utilization baseline. So what we do is we improve the workload balancing on the cluster by focusing on one metric that we care about the most. And that is the virtual machine happiness, right? So the important thing to make sure or to note here is that the improved DRS that runs every 1 minute, it provides a far more granular way to calculate the workload balancing, and this, of course, results in overall better performance of the workload. All right. So moving on to the Oracle workload design methodology, and this is the overview of the Oracle workload design methodology, right? So let's take a look at the design methodology. Essentially, we start at the top, right? We start with gathering requirements, right? So that phase is followed by selling the project to the stakeholders for buy-in, of course. And that again is followed by understanding the current environment constraints. We understand the database workload, right? We look at the various migration strategy, which includes essentially the big Indian to little Indian if you guys are moving off the AIX, HPUX of Solaris to x86, right? We also understand the design considerations for high availability, for disaster recovery, right? We want to make sure that we inculcate best practices. We want to make sure that we inculcate the backup and the recovery, right? We then have to inculcate the monitoring and the tuning aspect of it. And last but not the least, obviously, we have to make sure that we have to take into consideration the support and the licensing aspect, right? But then if you take a step back, right, and if you look at all these steps of the design workflow, there is no step that is particular to any architecture, physical or virtual. So in a sense, what we're trying to say here is there is no change in the design methodology when one virtualizes Oracle workloads, right, Oracle applications or Oracle databases on a VMware vSphere environment. So as I mentioned before, the key thing to keep in mind, best practices need to be inculcated into every layer of the stack. And that includes the virtualization as well to ensure that the workload can take advantage of the underlying stack, right? So some of the best practices that comes in my mind that we can call out here is essentially to make sure that use para-virtualized SCSI controllers whenever possible, right? We want to make sure that we avoid CPU and memory overcommit, right? And that we use huge pages. So if you look at some of the Oracle recommendations, right, we kind of echo some of the Oracle recommendations as well, right? We want to make sure that we design with NUMA in mind, right? We want to make sure that we use VMX Net3 adapters whenever and wherever possible. So the link at the slide, the link at the bottom of the slide here, that essentially is the Oracle databases on VMware best practices guide. So do take a look at it when you guys get a chance. But moving on. All right. So now we come to a point where essentially one needs to ask a question as to essentially what do customers really want, right? And what they really want is VMware hybrid cloud. So as customers, they move to the cloud, essentially, they are looking for ways to get best of both the worlds without buying new hardware, right? Without any kind of refactoring, without any kind of replatforming, right? They want to make sure that they want to leverage the existing investments. They want to leverage the existing skill set. They want to leverage the existing tools, right? So with on-premises, as you can see, right, you are able to use the familiar tools, the familiar processes. You are able to leverage existing investments. You're able to maintain your unique hardware configurations. You're able to have a granular control over the placement of apps and data, right? And when you go to public cloud, you're able to scale up faster. You can reduce the cost. You can establish a global footprint, pay-as-you-go model. You're able to access broader range of services, right? So for those customers that want to adopt cloud, cloud migration, right? So cloud migration, the data center evacuation that we have seen is one of the top use cases, followed by the disaster recovery data center extension, right? And again, some of the use cases are here, are the data center extension, disaster recovery, cloud migration, new generation apps, right? So the one thing that I would like to call out here is any kind of rework that would need to happen, one would have to migrate that workload to the cloud. Essentially what we've seen is take 60% of the cost and 90% of the time. And the reason why this is critical is, I'll explain that in the next slide here, right? Essentially, right, with VMware, we have a couple of hybrid cloud offerings, right? The fact that you have VMware on premises and the fact that you have the same VMware footprint, right, the same VMware software running in the cloud makes this journey, all right, or makes this transformation very seamless, very transparent, right? With a single mouse click, or with a single mouse click, the right click, one can then Vmotion their workload from on-premises to the cloud and back. If there is a layer 2 VPN, all right, with a direct connect attached between the on-premises and the cloud, right? And that magic is able to happen because it's VMware all over, right? So coming back to the hybrid cloud offerings here, essentially we unveiled the VMware Cloud on AWS in 2017, right? OCVS, which Faisal will be talking about in the forthcoming slide, that was announced September 16, 2019. GCVE, Google Cloud VMware Engine, that got GA June 20th in 2020. And last but not the least, we have AVS, the Azure VMware solution. But this session, we will be focusing on the OCVS, or the Oracle Cloud VMware solutions. All right. So moving on to the Oracle Cloud VMware solution. So the thing, on September 16th of 2019, right, there was a landmark agreement that was signed between VMware and Oracle, and there were two offshoots of that. So the first offshoot was the product, the Oracle Cloud VMware solution, which I spoke about in the previous slide, right? Basically, that is enabling customers to run VMware Cloud Foundation on Oracle Gen 2 cloud infrastructure, right? The fact that Oracle became a partner in the VMware Cloud Provider Program, which is the VCPP, and the OCVS solution, right, the OCVS product will be sold by Oracle and the partners, right? And the link at the bottom of the slide essentially talks about the beginning of a new strategic relationship, right? Now, the second offshoot of this strategic partnership or this agreement was a landmark change to the most important node that essentially is, right, the very crux of Oracle support on a VMware environment, the Metlink Note 249212.1, right? There used to be a paragraph in that that basically said if customer had any issues, Oracle reserves the right to have the customer replicate this issue on another physical architecture, and if the issue pertains or persists, then Oracle would take this case up, right? Well, that paragraph is gone. So this note has been completely revamped, has been completely changed. It very emphatically, right, very unambiguously states that customers with an active support contract and running supported versions of Oracle products will receive assistance from Oracle when running those products on a VMware virtualized environment. Right? And one thing to point out here, this support policy does not affect any of the licensing policies by Oracle or by VMware. Okay, so this note on mysupport.oracle.com, this essentially lays down the Oracle Enterprise One support policy for virtual server environment. Essentially, the policy for running Enterprise One on VMware is deferred to Metalink Note 249.212.1, which we essentially spoke about, right? We already spoke about that in the previous slide, and which says very clearly, customers with an active support contract and running supported versions of Oracle products will receive assistance from Oracle when running those products on a VMware virtualized environment. Right. So JDE Edwards Enterprise One software, that's very scalable and that runs on multiple operating systems, right? And then if you look at this particular certification matrix here, essentially Oracle certifies the JDE Edwards software to certain operating systems. It's not certified to specific hardware configurations. So the thing to keep in mind is as long as a customer configures their machine with supported operating system, Oracle will definitely make sure that that this particular system is supported and it is certified. So the name of the game here is to make sure that two of the checkboxes have been taken care of. So as long as we run a certified version of the JDE Edwards software on a certified operating system, we keep the Oracle vendor happy. And as long as we run the same certified guest operating system on a certified VMware vSphere platform, we keep VMware, the vendor, happy. The name of the game is to make sure that both the vendors are happy. I want to hand this over to Faisal to talk about Oracle Cloud VMware solution. Go ahead, Faisal.
Thank you, Sudhir. Thanks a lot for the great explanation of the various features and how you run and architect your Oracle workloads on VMware. So now, as Sudhir highlighted, that the customers have been looking at options to run their Oracle workloads, their applications, PeopleSoft, JDE Edwards, and others, and their database workloads on VMware, and especially in a hybrid cloud environment. And what better way to combine VMware and Oracle and place them on Oracle Cloud and provide the customers the experience that they're looking for. Next slide, please, Sudhir. The mandatory safe harbor statement that whatever I'm going to talk about is a general product direction. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when we start talking about customers moving to the cloud and customers embarking on digital transformation journeys and migrating their workloads to cloud or extending their data centers, as Sudhir highlighted, there are some key considerations, some key things that the customers are looking for. What we have started to observe that the larger enterprises, the customers who have been running mission critical workloads, Oracle databases, Oracle applications on-prem and others, they are looking at increasing their speed and business agility. They want to experience elasticity. They want to have skill at their fingertips that they can expand their environments as and when they want. Now, the other side that comes up is that there is constant innovation happening in the world of cloud, in the world of VMware and cloud as well. And customers want to be able to leverage each of those to modernize their IT landscape, to modernize how they run their applications on-prem and on cloud. And of course, the final one is that they want to make sure that they manage their CapEx and reduce their total cost of ownership in the process of doing all of that. Now, what that has resulted in is that over the last few years, we have seen customers and enterprises going from IT strategies which were somewhat like cloud also or cloud maybe. Then it came to the cloud first, which we are seeing now. And it has to be a cloud first IT strategy that we need to have it in our strategies to be able to move, extend, migrate our workloads to the cloud. Next slide, please. Now, when customers start to embark on that journey, it's not just about getting innovation. It's not just about reducing your CapEx. there are some very, very key considerations to adopting cloud. There's some very key considerations on the minds of the CIOs and the CTOs and the infrastructure leads. They want to make sure that the performance of their systems is exactly at par with what they have been running on-prem. Now, when you're experiencing a better performance, the first thing would be, what about the cost? Of course, they want to improve that cost, because remember, improving our TCO was one of the key factors in our IT strategy. When I decide to move across to the cloud, I need to have a seamless application migration strategy. I want to be able to move across to the cloud with minimum changes to my applications, to my architecture, and to how I really operate and run my environment. And it has to be secure. I have been running my applications in my own data centers, in my own on-premises environment. I want, if I'm moving it across, what is the security architecture is there? Will I be able to move my security posture? I want to have that end-to-end security. And of course, I'm going into hybrid cloud. I want to have a multi-cloud strategy as well. I've got on-prem, I'm moving across to one cloud. I should be able to use what I want and when I want to do that. And these are definitely the top of mind when you talk about any IT strategy being developed by the large enterprises. Next slide, please. Now, we at Oracle Cloud have been working with customers for over 4 decades. We've been custodians of your most valuable asset. We've been custodians of your data, whether you're a financial services company, whether you're in manufacturing, automobiles, airlines. We have been running your databases, and as I said, we've been maintaining the most valuable asset. Now, when we've been enabling you to manage your data, when we started to think about cloud, we started to think about cloud for the most mission critical applications. Now, our Gen 2 architecture is purpose built for enterprise workloads. It is purpose built to allow our customers, the largest enterprises globally, to be able to run, monitor, manage, and operate their environments at a higher performance, much superior to what they're getting on-prem and by any other offerings as well. Now, when we're giving this Gen 2 architecture, it is built on the fundamental basis of security. It is a zero trust architecture. Our security methodology is to have security always on, where whatever workloads you provision, whatever you do in your environment, security is there. If it does not follow security and compliance processes, that operation cannot be allowed by the cloud itself. Innovation. When you move across to the cloud, of course, it should be just the starting point. That's where innovation kicks into high gear. That's where you start leveraging everything, all the services, solutions, feature sets that are available on the cloud, that are provided by us as Oracle Cloud, to make sure that you achieve that digital transformation that you have been looking to achieve with your cloud first policy. And again, I couldn't emphasize more on the superior economics. So all of this, if you're getting it at a better price, if you're getting it by lowering your TCO, it just makes up for a win-win situation for customers. Next slide, please. Now, moving on with the same mindset as to why Oracle Cloud. Customers have been running their workloads, different workloads across different industry verticals, be it manufacturing, public sector, financial services, airlines. Mission critical workloads, which are high volume and high performance, are running on Oracle Cloud. We have created our architecture, our infrastructure to provide faster components than other clouds, to make sure that they're not just on par with on-premises systems, but they exceed the customer's expectations when it comes to performance. And again, having said that, it should come with minimum re-architecture. You should be able to move your workloads across to the cloud seamlessly without any re-architecture, without any changes to the way you run your workloads, to the way you operate. So again, seamless experience, exactly on par with your on-premises systems, and get better performance on the cloud. Next slide, please. I spoke about security. When we talk to our customers, as I said, the largest enterprises across the globe, security comes up right at the top. That what about security for my workloads? So again, as my slide says, that we are enabling you to build a strong and secure foundation when you move across to Oracle Cloud. Our approach to security, number one, it's zero trust. You allow what you want to communicate. If you don't allow it, it will not run. It will not be allowed to communicate. So it's in your hands what works and what doesn't work. In terms of always on security, we've got features. We keep on enhancing our security product portfolio where you've got features where you can define security zones. Whatever happens in that security zone, for example, if a database is not encrypted, it will not be allowed in that zone. If you are not providing certain security control or tightening your security rules, it will not be allowed to run in that zone. So this is always on. It is being monitored by systems across the globe, wherever you run your workloads, and the security is 100% automated. Stronger tenant isolation, no communication between tenants. There is complete isolation between control plane, between the tenants, between us and the tenants as well. And again, core to edge security. We secure our infrastructure by using isolated network virtualization to make sure that our tenants are isolated, our control plane is isolated from the tenants as well. When you move across to the cloud, it is our aim and our goal to enable you to secure your workloads exactly and better than what you have been doing on-prem. So you can bring across your security postures exactly the same way you have been doing on-prem. And security for the cloud. If you have been using third-party vendors, you've been using any other firewall vendors, if you're used to using any other appliances, you can bring them across. Your security posture moves with you to the cloud, giving you that seamless experience that you've been looking for in your cloud migration strategies. Next slide, please. What better way to start combining the power of cloud with the power of virtualization? Now, Sudhir spoke at length about the benefits of VMware, the benefits of VMware virtualization to workloads, and specifically Oracle workloads, how this feature set enables and makes it a better experience to run Oracle applications and workloads on VMware environments. Now, when you combine that with cloud, you are giving customers that faster server provisioning and deployment, that HA features, the DRS features that VMware brings, and then you combine that with on-demand resource availability. You're combining that with new and innovative services. You are combining that with enhanced data security as well. And the result is again a win-win for everyone. VMware combined with cloud, combined with Oracle Cloud, offers great convenience, great flexibility, and a superior performance and a superior experience for our customers. Next slide, please. And the combination of VMware with Oracle Cloud is what we are going to talk about in the next section of my presentation here. Oracle Cloud VMware solution. As Sudhir said, headline news at one of the headline news at Open World last year, Oracle and VMware coming together, providing our customers the ability to run VMware-based workloads natively on Oracle Cloud. It combines the power of Oracle Cloud infrastructure with the flexibility and enhanced feature sets of the VMware software to give our customers exactly what they have been looking for. Same experience that they've had on-prem for years with their applications, running with vSphere, going on to NSX, and going on to vSAN as well. And that now just extends across to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It runs on OCI bare metal compute. It allows you to move your workloads with minimum re-architecture seamlessly. It allows you the ability to connect your Oracle Cloud VMware solution environment to native OCI services, Exadata, autonomous databases, load balancers, any other resources, Kubernetes engine, all of that. Then you can connect across to your on-prem environment using VMware software, VMware tools such as HCX, SRM, so on and so forth, to get that migration experience, to get that DR experience, depending on what use cases you are provisioning. Next slide, please. And what do you get when you provision your workloads on Oracle Cloud VMware solution? You get a solution that is dedicated for you. It is your hardware environment. It is your VMware cluster in Oracle Cloud. You get full control on that environment, which results in giving you a familiar VMware experience with regards to management, with regards to monitoring, with regards to operations. Migration options, there are a number of migration options provided by VMware, which just makes that process very easy, very seamless for you. It allows you to access Oracle Cloud services. And the biggest point here is that it is available globally. The scale is across the globe. Wherever Oracle Cloud is available, the solution is available with you. By the time you look at the presentation, the numbers that I'm showing with regards to the number of regions, that would already have increased by a few regions. So you see, the number of regions is growing. The scale at which this is available to you is truly global. You talk about the geography, it is available. Oracle Cloud VMware solution is available. If you want VMware on the cloud, you have it available wherever you want it. And of course, it is also available in Oracle's dedicated region cloud at customer, which is basically public cloud in your own data centers. Next slide, please. Now, what exactly is Oracle Cloud VMware solution? How do I benefit out of this? What else am I getting? So what you're basically getting is exactly what you have had in your environments for years and years with VMware. You started using VMware with vSphere. You started getting onto the software-defined data center with NSX. You started using vSAN as well. Now you've brought in cloud into your IT strategy, and you want to have the same experience. What we have done and what we have built is giving you a native VMware-based cloud environment in Oracle Cloud. Now, what does that mean? It's a native environment. What it means is that this runs on the same infrastructure that runs all of our other services. This is what allows us to bring this solution across to you at the scale that I spoke about on my previous slide. When we give this across to you, we also give you complete administrative control. So whatever users, whatever rights, whatever role-based access control policies you've had on-prem, you can configure exactly the same thing. You have all the feature sets available to you exactly the same way in Oracle Cloud VMware solution. So what happens is that you're leveraging the same tools, the same vCenter, the same NSX manager you're using to control and configure your VMware environment. You log on to the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure console to manage the Oracle side of things. It's your processes that you've been using on-prem, and you manage your VMware environment, your hybrid cloud environment now between on-prem and Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Next slide, please. And what exactly can I do with this? Yes, I understand I'm going into hybrid cloud model. This is what I've always wanted. This is what my security, my cloud first policy stipulates. So basically, the use cases that you get Number one, you're migrating across to the cloud. You're looking to move your workloads from an on-prem environment to the cloud. The reasons could be that you're minimizing your on-prem data center footprint. The reasons could be that maybe you are expanding your footprint and you don't want to invest more in on-prem systems. You want to go across to the cloud and experience all the benefits that we've been talking about. This gives you the rapid lift and shift capability with, again, minimum disruption. Hybrid deployment or capacity expansion. This solution allows you to accommodate growth easily. So again, if your Oracle footprint is increasing, your application footprint, your workloads are increasing on-prem, you want to move across to the cloud, this is the perfect way to do that and get that all the benefits that we've been talking about. Last but not the least, disaster recovery in the cloud. You gain redundancy for your critical services, for your mission critical workloads, for your databases, for your PeopleSoft, your JDE Edwards. You move them across and you get the disaster recovery in the cloud. Now it allows you to easily accommodate failovers and backups. VMware provides you with tools again such as HCX, such as SRM, which you can use in with this solution to get that disaster recovery, migration, and VM mobility that you would want to achieve with this solution. Next slide, please. Now from here, we'll start looking at the provisioning process, what you get with this when you provision Oracle Cloud VMware solution. So when I said that it's a native VMware environment available natively in Oracle Cloud. Now what that basically means is that it configures exactly the same things that you configure on-prem. So we start by creating subnets. We start by creating VLANs for you. Yes, VLANs, layer 2 networking in the cloud. That's what OCI bring you with this as well, to really truly make this exactly the same experience as on-prem. When we configure your network, we configure the route tables and security as well to provide that stitching to be able to connect into your on-prem environment, to the internet, to your native OCI services and any other destinations that you want to connect to. Of course, with the correct security controls, with network security groups and security lists. Next slide, please. Once you set the foundations with a strong networking, strong security rules, routing rules, the next part that comes into the picture is where the software actually runs. This is where we allocate and provision compute resources. It gets provisioned in availability domain of your choice in whichever Oracle Cloud region that you choose to deploy your solution in. The hosts are deployed across fault domains in that AD of your choice. You've already done, the networking part has already been done. Compartment is what is a logical section for your resources, how you club your resources together. You've already selected that as well. And what you get as a result is the VMware SDDC software running on top of 3 bare metal nodes, which is the starting minimum footprint. These 3 bare metal nodes give you 156 CPU cores with 2.3 terabytes of memory and 153 terabytes of raw storage capacity, raw NVMe storage capacity. Each host has got 225 gig NICs on it. 3 is just the starting number. It can scale up to 64, and you can imagine the massive scale that you can achieve when you scale out your Oracle Cloud VMware solution and start provisioning your workloads. This is by far the largest capacity that you're getting in any VMware environment on the cloud today. Next slide, please. The next thing, of course, you've set the foundations, you've set aside the nodes. The next thing is where the VMware software starts to come on top of it. You get the choice to deploy which version of VMware software you want. You can choose between vSphere 6.5 or 6.7. Again, flexibility, familiar experience, whatever you have on-prem, you bring the same thing across. We give you options. Again, that translates into what vSAN versions you're getting. NSX, again, it's 2.5.1. That's what you're getting right now. Once these are deployed, we install and configure the vCenter and NSX Manager for you as well. NSX Manager cluster is configured, becomes available for you. And once the provision process is complete, we give you the URLs and credentials to go in and log into your systems on Oracle Cloud VMware solution. Next slide, please. Now from here, we'll just start to take a look at the UI and how you perform this. When the deployment is complete, when the networking compute, the VMware software has been deployed, this is the UI view that you get on the VMware console. What happens from here is we show you exactly what your environment looks like, how many ESXi hosts you have, what are the networks, what are your NSX manager, what's your NSX manager configuration, again, availability domains, all the different things that we spoke about. Next, please, Sudhir. The resulting environment that you get over there is a complete software-defined data center deployed with 3 bare metal nodes in a provisioning subnet with your management systems, your NSX manager, your vCenter, your NSX edges in a vSphere VLAN. You've got Vmotion VLANs, vSAN, vTAP, everything that VMware requires, and a VMware SDDC with the required NSX configuration, depending on all the requirements that you provided during the provisioning process. Your network CIDRs and your workload networks, all of that gets provisioned, and you are handed over a finished VMware environment. Next slide, please. The console, as I said, we give you the vCenter and NSX Manager URLs. This is where you log into your systems from. We generate initial passwords for you, which of course you will change on the first login. Usernames are exactly what you've been using. Again, administrator@vsphere.local. Just because we give you the ability to connect and change your domains if you want to, you can go ahead and change these, modify them as and when you want to. But again, initial passwords are generated. You go in, you change them on first login. Next slide, please. The next section, what are the hosts that I've deployed? I gave a naming prefix. I started with the minimum footprint. I've got 3 hosts. We show you the view over there. You see that they're in an active state. What are the names? When were they created? What are they running? When you click on each of the compute instances, you can look at the details for that particular host from that view. Next slide, please. The next view that comes into the picture is the networks. Again, we show you what VLANs have been deployed, what subnets have been deployed, what are the different subnet ranges that have been allocated for each of these networks. So this is like a comprehensive view for you, where from one view itself, you're able to see exactly what your environment involves. Next slide, please. Right size or terminate the SDDC. We give you the ability to scale your environment. We give you the ability to make changes to it, or if you want to terminate this environment and deploy a new one, you can do it from the same view as well. Next slide. To make this a better experience, to allow you to configure connectivity across to your on-prem network, internet, Oracle Services Network, we've given what we call quick actions. So using these quick actions, we have made workflows which allow you to automatically configure your connectivity right from the console, from the same view. You click on this, provide some basic information, and we do the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure side of configuration for you without any interaction from you. Only you give what you want and where you want to connect across to. We take care of the rest. You take care of your VMware environment, and you're good to go with your connectivities. Next slide, please. Biggest aspect, full controllability. You get the ability to provision, launch your VMware SDDC. You get the ability to modify it. You expand it. You add a host, and then you can add it to the cluster as and when you want. You want to delete a host, you can do it from the OCI console as well. And again, the management aspect, you can customize, update, and operate your environment as and when you want it, as and how you want it. It's in your full control after the provisioning has been completed. So as my slide shows, when you add a host, the host gets added and it's available for you to add it to your cluster the way you would want to do it, and the deletion works in the same way. Next slide, please. Connecting your SDDC to on-prem environments to achieve VM mobility, to achieve disaster recovery, to achieve that those use cases of data center migrations, expansions, disaster recovery, and expanding your environment as well. We give you the ability to configure Fast Connect, which is a dedicated connection, or VPN Connect, which is IPsec VPN, directly into your on-prem networks or any other branch networks that you may have. Next slide, please. Enhance your experience by connecting across to the autonomous database, Exadata, analytics services, AI, machine learning, big data, all the services that are available in your tenancy from Oracle Cloud. You can connect across to them seamlessly to enhance your VMware experience in Oracle Cloud. Next slide, please. Internet experience, the next transition to expose your workloads, to expose your applications to your users on the internet. You can publish your applications seamlessly to the internet as well. Next slide. Thank you. Talking about the key operational takeaways. You deploy your VMware stack, you get complete control over it. Self-service provisioning with full administrative control, including root access. Customers get full access using vCenter NSX Manager and SSH access to your hosts as well to run things like ESX top, ESX CLI commands. You go in there if you want to deploy any other VIBs or anything, you get the access, you get the capability to do that using SSH credentials, which and SSH keys which you provide at provisioning time. It's a secure, isolated, and dedicated environment which is yours and yours only. You manage and monitor it the way you want to do it. Software versions, updates, and upgrades at your luxury. You get to update, you get to upgrade the environment as and when you want it. Server failures and support, tier 1 and tier 2 support is taken up by Oracle, and tier 3 support goes to VMware. And in case of any server failures, customers provision a new host and they just replace the faulty host in their SDDC to make sure that they have full control on this aspect as well. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this last slide. I will just give one key takeaway which should sum it up for you. It is your applications that is running in your environment on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure under your management, your full control, and all according to your update, upgrade, operational, and management lifecycle policies as and when you want it. Your native VMware environment in Oracle Cloud with the leading SLAs available today. With that, I hand it back to Sudhir. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. That was very good. All right, to wrap it up, essentially, this slide basically has a lot of collaterals here. So licensing collaterals, also to talk about Oracle running on VMware with different options, right, with different features, so on and so forth. Oracle on vSAN as well, right? And the link at the bottom of the slide essentially talks about the external solution page, which basically houses most of the Oracle collaterals on the business critical application Oracle homepage. And this is essentially the one-stop shop. So any collateral that has been produced so far, whether it's by my predecessors or whether it's by me, whether it's Oracle on, forthcoming articles of Oracle on OCVS, or whether it's Oracle on vSAN, Oracle with virtual volumes, whether it's Oracle with persistent memory or RDMA, right? Any technical blogs, any KB articles, any key things that I would like to highlight, anything and everything finds a home here. So please don't get put off by the here. It's a living blog. So as and when collaterals are produced, we keep updating this blog site. But we are to the end of the session here today. So that's a bit introduction about me, right? And I'm going to quickly move over to Faisal. for sake of time, right? And I think we are ready for some question and answers, and we hope to see you at the physical event next year, right? So thank you for listening to us.
Thank you very much.